In the gleaming boardroom of Meridian Strategies, a brilliant project manager was about to watch his career-defining moment be stolen from him. What started as a routine client presentation took a shocking turn when he came face-to-face with his director claiming full credit for 6 months of groundbreaking work. William Bill Gates Jr. wasn't your typical Silicon Valley consultant. For 5 years, he had spent his life climbing from analyst to senior project manager through pure merit and innovation, known for his revolutionary approach to AI-driven supply chain optimization that promised to save clients millions. When he encountered Marcus Webb delivering his own algorithms and insights to GlobalTech's executives, he had no idea he was walking into a systematic pattern of corporate exploitation. Bill's stunned silence in that boardroom would lead to a strategic war that would expose corruption at the highest levels. What began as stolen credit would become a Silicon Valley reckoning. The consulting industry would never be the same after one man's refusal to accept that talent could be permanently buried by corporate politics. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The glow from Bill Gates Jr.'s dual monitors cast familiar shadows across his cubicle as the clock on his screen clicked past 11:47 p.m. Around him, Meridian Strategies' Silicon Valley headquarters had settled into its nocturnal rhythm, the hum of servers, the distant whisper of the building's ventilation system, and the occasional ping of late-night emails from colleagues burning the midnight oil on their own career-defining projects. Bill's fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision, making final adjustments to the algorithm that had consumed his every waking moment for the past 6 months. The code was elegant in its complexity, an AI-driven supply chain optimization system that could predict manufacturing bottlenecks 3 months in advance, automatically reroute shipments to avoid delays, and reduce overhead costs by an estimated 18%. For GlobalTech Industries, their Fortune 500 client, it represented potential savings of over $40 million annually. Still here, Gates? Rebecca Thompson's voice carried across the cubicle wall, tinged with both concern and admiration. Her military background had taught her the value of dedication, but even she recognized obsession when she saw it. Just finishing the final stress tests, Bill replied, not looking away from his screen. The Monte Carlo simulations are running clean. No edge cases, no memory leaks. He paused, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. Rebecca, I think we actually did it. She wheeled her chair around the partition, coffee mug in hand despite the late hour. Rebecca's analytical mind had been instrumental in refining the system's data processing protocols, her experience in military intelligence lending itself perfectly to pattern recognition algorithms. The predictive accuracy is holding at 97.3%? 97.4% as of 10 minutes ago. Bill's smile was tired but genuine. We're not just meeting the client specifications. We're exceeding them by margins they didn't think possible. Rebecca studied the cascading data on his monitors, but her attention was drawn to something else. The methodical way Bill had documented every innovation, every breakthrough moment, every late-night epiphany that had led to this achievement. His digital notebooks were meticulous, time-stamped, cross-referenced. The work of someone who understood that in corporate America, proof of authorship mattered as much as the innovation itself. Marcus is going to be impressed, she said, though something in her tone suggested reservation. Bill leaned back in his chair, finally allowing his shoulders to relax. He's been supportive from day one. When I first pitched the concept, he immediately saw the potential. Not every director would have given a senior PM this much autonomy on a $600,000 project. No, Rebecca agreed quietly. Not every director would. The elevator chimed softly in the distance, and both of them turned toward the sound. Marcus Webb emerged from the elevator bank, his tailored suit still crisp despite the late hour, his silver hair perfectly styled. At 45, Webb carried himself with the confidence of someone who had climbed the corporate ladder through a combination of charm, strategic thinking, and what he liked to call collaborative leadership. Burning the midnight oil again, team? Webb's smile was warm, paternal. Bill, I hope you're not driving yourself too hard. Though I have to say the passion you've shown for this project has been remarkable. Bill felt a familiar surge of gratitude toward his director. Webb had been his champion from the beginning, protecting him from corporate interference, ensuring he had the resources he needed, running interference with senior leadership when the project's timeline stretched longer than originally anticipated. Actually, Marcus, perfect timing. Bill gestured toward his monitors. I think we're ready for the final review. All systems are optimized, stress-tested, and documented. We could present to GlobalTech tomorrow if needed. Webb's eyes lit up with genuine interest. Outstanding. Why don't we schedule a private review session first thing Monday morning? I want to make sure I understand every aspect of your innovation before we present to the client. This kind of breakthrough deserves proper recognition. Absolutely. Bill began pulling up the project documentation. The core innovation is in the predictive modeling engine. Instead of traditional supply chain analytics that react to disruptions, this system anticipates them using machine learning algorithms that I adapted from weather prediction models. Webb moved closer, his attention focused intently on the screen. Fascinating. Walk me through the underlying mathematics. For the next 20 minutes, Bill explained his methodology with the enthusiasm of someone sharing a discovery that had consumed months of his life. Webb asked probing questions about the algorithm's decision trees, the training data sets, the validation processes. His questions demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of both the technical challenges and the business implications. Brilliant, Webb said finally. Truly brilliant. The way you've approached the optimization problem. It's not just innovative, it's revolutionary. GlobalTech is going to be blown away. Rebecca watched the exchange with the observational skills that had served her well in military intelligence. Webb's interest seemed genuine, but there was something about his questions that felt less like a supervisor seeking understanding and more like someone conducting a technical debrief. She filed the observation away, uncertain of its significance. I should let you both get home, Webb said, checking his watch. Bill, can you prepare a comprehensive presentation for our Monday review? I want to make sure we position this properly for the client meeting on Wednesday. Already started, Bill replied. I'll have the full deck ready by Monday morning. After Webb departed, Rebecca lingered by Bill's desk. Long day tomorrow? Worth it, though. Bill began saving his files, his excitement still palpable. 6 months ago, this was just a theory. Now it's going to save GlobalTech millions and probably revolutionize how Fortune 500 companies approach supply chain management. You should call your parents, Rebecca suggested. They'd want to hear about this milestone. Bill's expression softened. His parents had sacrificed tremendously to support his education. His father working double shifts at the hardware store, his mother taking on weekend bookkeeping jobs to help pay for his MBA at Wharton. The boy from small-town Ohio who had arrived in Silicon Valley 5 years ago with nothing but determination and student loan debt was finally on the verge of something significant. They're probably asleep, he said, but he was already reaching for his phone. It's only 9 in Ohio, Rebecca pointed out. And this is the kind of news that's worth waking up for. Bill dialed, and his father's familiar voice answered on the second ring. Billy? Everything all right? Everything's great, Dad. Better than great. Bill found himself standing, pacing slightly as he spoke. Remember that project I've been working on? The big one for the manufacturing company? The one that's been keeping you up nights for months? That's the one. Dad, I think we've got something special here. Something that could change everything. His father's pride was audible across the miles. I knew it. Your mother and I, we always knew you had something special in you. Tell me about it. As Bill described his innovation in terms his father could understand, Rebecca quietly gathered her things, but she paused at the elevator, watching Bill's animated gestures, listening to his voice carry across the empty office. There was something pure about his excitement, something untainted by the corporate cynicism that infected so many of their colleagues. She thought about Marcus Webb's intense questioning, about the way he had probed every technical detail. In the military, she had learned to trust her instincts about people's motivations. And right now, those instincts were sending up warning signals she couldn't quite articulate. The elevator arrived, and as the doors closed, Rebecca made a mental note to keep a closer eye on the dynamics between Bill and their director. In her experience, when someone showed that level of interest in another person's work, it rarely ended with simple mentorship. Back at his desk, Bill finished his call with a promise to visit home soon to celebrate properly with his parents. As he finally shut down his computers and gathered his things, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight belonged to the quiet pride of work well done. The innovation that would define his career was complete. He had no way of knowing that in less than a week, those same algorithms and insights would be presented to GlobalTech Industries, just not by him. Bill arrived at Meridian's executive boardroom 15 minutes early on Wednesday morning, his presentation materials organized in a leather portfolio his parents had given him for his MBA graduation. The room's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of Silicon Valley, and the polished mahogany table reflected the morning sunlight streaming through them. He had rehearsed his talking points over the weekend, practiced the technical demonstrations until they flowed seamlessly, and prepared detailed answers for every conceivable question GlobalTech's executives might ask. What he hadn't prepared for was walking into the room to find Marcus Webb already presenting his work to the assembled clients. The predictive modeling engine represents a fundamental shift in supply chain analytics, Webb was saying. Standing confidently at the head of the table, his laser pointer dancing across Bill's algorithms displayed on the wall-mounted screens. Rather than reacting to disruptions, this system anticipates them using machine learning protocols adapted from meteorological forecasting. Bill froze in the doorway, his portfolio suddenly feeling impossibly heavy in his hands. The GlobalTech executives, including CTO Jennifer Martinez, whom Bill had specifically prepared to address, given her deep technical background, were nodding appreciatively as Webb walked through the innovation that had consumed Bill's every waking moment for 6 months. "Ah, Bill," Webb said without missing a beat as he noticed his arrival. "Perfect timing. I was just explaining to our GlobalTech partners how our team approached this challenge." The emphasis on "our team" was subtle but unmistakable. "Please, take a seat. I know you've been instrumental in handling the implementation details." Implementation details. Bill felt the words hit him like a physical blow. 6 months of innovation, breakthrough thinking, and technical brilliance reduced to, quote, implementation details. He moved mechanically to an empty chair along the wall, not at the table with the other presenters, he noted, and watched in stunned silence as Webb continued. Jennifer Martinez leaned forward, her sharp eyes focused on the technical specifications. "The optimization algorithms, they're remarkably sophisticated. Can you walk us through the decision tree methodology?" Webb's pause was nearly imperceptible, but Bill caught it. For a fraction of a second, uncertainty flickered across his director's face before the polished confidence returned. "Absolutely. The decision trees utilize a modified gradient boosting approach." Webb launched into an explanation that Bill recognized word for word from his own documentation, delivered with the smooth authority of someone who had lived and breathed the development process. "Fascinating," Martinez said, making notes on her tablet. "And the validation protocols? How did you ensure the 97.4% accuracy rate?" Again, that micropause. "Our validation process involved extensive Monte Carlo simulations," Webb replied, once again using Bill's exact phrasing. "We stress-tested the system against historical disruption data across multiple industry verticals." Bill found himself gripping the arms of his chair as he watched Webb field question after question using his research, his insights, his late-night breakthroughs. When Martinez asked about the novel approach to bottleneck prediction, Webb seamlessly quoted from Bill's technical notes. When the CFO inquired about implementation timelines, Webb referenced the project plan Bill had meticulously crafted. "This is extraordinary work," Martinez said, her voice carrying genuine admiration. "The innovation here isn't just incremental, it's revolutionary. We're looking at potential cost savings that exceed our most optimistic projections." "Thank you," Webb replied with practiced humility. "It's been a challenging but rewarding project, the kind of breakthrough that defines a consulting relationship." Bill wanted to speak, to clarify, to claim even a fraction of the credit for his work. But every time he leaned forward, Webb would smoothly redirect the conversation. maintaining control of the presentation with the skill of a master politician. When Bill finally managed to interject during a discussion of the algorithm's learning parameters, Webb cut him off with practiced ease. "Bill raises a good point about the technical specifications," Webb said, effectively silencing him while appearing to acknowledge his contribution. "But from a strategic perspective, what really matters is the business impact." The meeting concluded with GlobalTech's immediate commitment to the full $600,000 implementation. Handshakes were exchanged, business cards traded, congratulations offered. Through it all, Bill sat in his chair along the wall, watching his career-defining achievement be credited entirely to Marcus Webb. As the GlobalTech executives filed out, Martinez paused near Bill's chair. "Excellent work on the implementation details," she said, her tone professional but slightly puzzled. Something in her expression suggested she had noticed the disconnect between Webb's presentation style and the depth of technical innovation being presented. After the room emptied, except for Bill and Webb, silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Finally, Webb closed his laptop and turned to face his subordinate, with that same paternal smile that had once inspired such loyalty. "Outstanding presentation, don't you think?" Webb said casually. "Though I have to say, team presentations can be confusing for clients. Too many voices, too many perspectives. Senior leadership needs to take point on client relationships. It's about maintaining clear communication channels." Bill stared at him, searching for any sign of acknowledgement, any hint of guilt or recognition of what had just occurred. Instead, he found only the polished confidence of a man entirely comfortable with his actions. "The work," Bill began, but Webb was already moving toward the door, "was exemplary. You should be proud of your contribution to this success." Webb paused at the doorway, his hand on the handle. "I'll make sure this project features prominently in your next performance review. Team player like you, with attention to implementation details. That's exactly what Meridian values." Webb left Bill alone in the boardroom, surrounded by the lingering scent of expensive cologne and the echo of stolen credit. Outside the windows, Silicon Valley hummed with its usual energy, dreams being built, fortunes being made, careers being launched. But for Bill, sitting in that chair along the wall where he had been relegated to watch his own innovation claimed by another, the morning felt like a fundamental shift in his understanding of how the world actually worked. His phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "How did it go?" Bill stared at the message for a long moment, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. How could he possibly explain what had just happened? How could he articulate the feeling of watching 6 months of his life's work be attributed to someone else with such casual authority? Finally, he typed back, "We need to talk." The morning sun continued to stream through the boardroom windows, but its warmth no longer reached him. The company-wide email arrived 3 days later, delivered to every Meridian employee's inbox with the subject line, "Celebrating Innovation Excellence. Marcus Webb leads breakthrough client success." Bill read it twice, each word hitting him like a physical blow. The email detailed Webb's visionary leadership on the GlobalTech project, praised his, "innovative approach to supply chain optimization," and announced his immediate promotion to Senior Director of Strategic Innovation. There was a single mention of Bill, listed among the dedicated team members who supported this initiative under Webb's guidance. Rebecca found him staring at his computer screen in his cubicle, his coffee growing cold beside an untouched sandwich. She had been watching him carefully since their brief conversation after the presentation, noting the way his usual energy had been replaced by something darker, more contemplative. "You saw the email," she said, settling into the chair beside his desk. "Supported the initiative," Bill repeated, his voice hollow. 6 months of my life reduced to, support." "We need to document everything," Rebecca said quietly, her military training kicking in. "Timestamps, email records, your project files." He moved them. Bill's fingers moved across his keyboard, pulling up the project directory. "All my detailed documentation, my research notes, the algorithm development logs, they're all in Webb's private folder now. Marked as confidential, Senior Director access only." Rebecca leaned closer, studying the screen. Her intelligence background had taught her to recognize patterns, and what she was seeing looked disturbingly familiar. "This isn't his first time, is it?" What do you mean? I've been asking around. Carefully. Rebecca glanced around the office to ensure they weren't being overheard. Remember Tom Harrison who left for Apex Consulting last year? I tracked him down. Webb was his director too. On that pharmaceutical logistics project, same pattern. Brilliant junior consultant does breakthrough work. Webb takes credit, consultant gets frustrated and leaves. Bill felt something cold settle in his stomach. How many others? At least 3 that I can confirm. Always the same methodology. Webb identifies promising projects, provides just enough support to maintain plausible deniability, then positions himself as the strategic mastermind when the work pays off. And no one stops him? Rebecca's expression was grim. Who's going to challenge a director? Especially one who delivers results and has senior leadership's ear. The consultants who get burned either leave quietly or get marginalized if they try to fight back. Bill pushed back from his desk, suddenly needing space to breathe. The open office layout that had once felt collaborative now seemed suffocating. Every conversation potentially overheard, every colleague a potential witness to his humiliation. I should have seen it coming. The way he questioned everything, documented every detail of my work. He's skilled at it, Rebecca acknowledged. Webb makes it look like mentorship, like collaborative leadership. He probably even convinces himself that he's providing strategic guidance that justifies claiming credit. The bastard actually said I should be grateful for the learning experience. Bill's voice carried a bitter edge that Rebecca had never heard from him before. When I tried to talk to him about attribution, he made it sound like I was being unprofessional for wanting individual recognition on a team project. Rebecca had seen good soldiers broken by corrupt commanding officers, watched talented people crushed by systems that rewarded politics over performance. Bill's situation triggered every protective instinct her military service had developed. What are you going to do? I don't know. Bill slumped in his chair, the weight of his situation finally settling on his shoulders. Report it to HR? They'll want documentation I no longer have access to. Go to senior leadership? Webb is already positioned as the innovation hero. Challenge him publicly? I'm a senior project manager going up against a newly promoted director. There's another option, Rebecca said carefully. Tom Harrison mentioned something interesting when I talked to him. The reason he went to Apex was in consulting wasn't just frustration with Webb. He was recruited. Recruited? Someone at Apex reached out to him specifically. Someone who knew about his work, understood what had really happened, and offered him a chance to build his career somewhere that would actually value his contributions. Bill looked up at her with the first spark of interest he'd shown since the presentation. You think someone at Apex knows about Webb's pattern? I think Marcus Webb made some enemies when he worked there. People with long memories and strategic patience. Before Bill could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but something made him answer. Bill Gates? This is David Harrison from Apex Consulting. I wonder if you might have time for lunch this week. I believe we have some mutual interests to discuss. Bill met Rebecca's eyes, seeing his own surprise reflected there. On the other end of the line, Harrison's voice carried the measured confidence of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. I think you'll find our conversation quite illuminating, Harrison continued, particularly regarding career opportunities for someone with your particular talents and recent experiences. How did you? Bill began, but Harrison smoothly interrupted. Let's just say that innovation has a way of attracting attention from those who know how to recognize it, even when others try to claim it as their own. Bill felt something shift inside him, a spark of hope mixing with the anger that had been building since Wednesday morning. I'm available tomorrow. Excellent. There's a restaurant in Palo Alto, Chez Laurent. Shall we say 1 o'clock? After hanging up, Bill stared at his phone for a long moment. Rebecca was watching him with the analytical expression she wore when piecing together intelligence reports. Harrison, she said. Same last name as Tom. Could be coincidence. Could be. Rebecca's smile was sharp. Or it could be that someone's been tracking Marcus Webb's career very carefully, waiting for the right moment to act. Bill felt a strange mix of anticipation and apprehension. For 3 days he had felt powerless, victimized by a system that rewarded manipulation over merit. Now, suddenly it seemed that system might have more players than he had realized. "What do you think he wants?" "Justice," Rebecca said simply. "The question is whether you're ready to pursue it." Bill looked around the office. At the cubicle where he had spent countless hours building something revolutionary, at the meeting rooms where his ideas had been born, at the corporate environment that had just taught him a brutal lesson about power and credit. Then he thought about Marcus Webb in his new corner office, probably already identifying his next victim. "Set up a meeting with HR," he said finally. "I want to document my concerns officially before I talk to Harrison. Whatever happens next, I want a paper trail." Rebecca nodded approvingly. "Smart. Cover your bases." "And Rebecca?" Bill met her eyes. "Whatever you've been documenting about Webb's pattern, keep doing it. I have a feeling we're going to need every piece of evidence we can get." As she walked back to her desk, Bill turned to stare out the window at the Silicon Valley landscape. Somewhere out there, David Harrison was planning a lunch conversation that might change everything. And somewhere in this building, Marcus Webb was enjoying the fruits of stolen labor, unaware that his past was finally catching up with him. The game was changing. Bill was no longer just a victim, he was about to become a player. Chez Laurent occupied a corner of University Avenue that whispered old money discretion, the kind of place where Silicon Valley's power brokers conducted business over $30 entrees and wine lists that read like investment portfolios. Bill arrived precisely at 1 o'clock, his best suit pressed and his mind racing with questions about the man who had summoned him here. David Harrison was already seated at a corner table, his silver hair and confident bearing suggesting someone comfortable with authority. As Bill approached, Harrison stood with the fluid grace of someone who had spent decades in executive suites, his handshake firm and his smile carrying genuine warmth. "Mr. Gates, thank you for coming. I hope you don't mind that I took the liberty of ordering wine, a Burgundy that I think you'll find complements both the menu and our conversation." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Bill settled into his chair, studying the man across from him. Harrison's appearance was polished but not ostentatious, expensive but understated. Everything about him suggested competence and strategic thinking. "You have me at a disadvantage, Mr. Harrison. I'm not sure how you know about my work or why you're interested in meeting. Please, call me David." Harrison lifted his wine glass in a casual toast. "And I know about your work because innovation has a way of attracting attention, especially when it's as groundbreaking as your supply chain optimization system." The words hit Bill like an electric shock. "My system?" "The predictive modeling engine that anticipates manufacturing bottlenecks 3 months in advance. The machine learning algorithms adapted from meteorological forecasting. The 97.4% accuracy rate achieved through Monte Carlo simulation validation." Harrison's recitation was precise, detailed, impossible to fake. Remarkable work, truly revolutionary. Bill felt his pulse quicken. "How could you possibly know those details?" Harrison's smile carried a hint of something darker. "Let's just say that when someone presents work that sophisticated, those of us in the industry who understand the technical complexities can usually distinguish between the originator and the presenter." "You were at the GlobalTech meeting?" "No, but I have colleagues who were. Jennifer Martinez, for instance, reached out to me afterward with some interesting observations about the presentation dynamics." Harrison leaned forward slightly. She noted that the strategic overview was delivered flawlessly, but when she asked detailed technical questions, there were inconsistencies. Bill remembered Martinez's puzzled expression during the meeting, the way her sharp eyes had moved between Webb and him. What kind of inconsistencies? The kind that suggests someone memorizing talking points rather than explaining work they actually developed. Harrison paused as the waiter delivered their appetizers. "Jennifer has worked with Marcus Webb before, you know, 5 years ago when he was still at Apex." The revelation landed like a physical blow. Webb worked at Apex? He did indeed, senior director level, just as he is now. And just as he was then, Marcus had a remarkable talent for identifying promising projects and positioning himself as their strategic architect. Harrison's tone remained conversational, But Bill detected steel underneath. The reason he left Apex wasn't pursuit of new opportunities, as his LinkedIn profile suggests. He was invited to resign. Because of credit theft? Because of a pattern of behavior that became impossible to ignore. Marcus claimed authorship of a blockchain security protocol developed by one of our most promising senior consultants. When that consultant tried to challenge the attribution, Marcus had him marginalized and eventually forced out. Bill felt pieces clicking into place. Tom Harrison, the consultant Rebecca mentioned, he's related to you? My son. The words carried quiet pride mixed with old anger. Brilliant young man, top of his class at Stanford, innovative thinker with tremendous potential. Marcus nearly destroyed his career before it could properly begin. Understanding dawned. You've been tracking Webb's career. Monitoring would be a more accurate term. Waiting for the right moment to act. Harrison's expression hardened slightly. Men like Marcus Webb operate by exploiting the trust and dedication of talented people. They thrive in environments where credit flows upward and accountability flows downward, but they also tend to repeat their patterns. And you've been waiting for him to repeat this one. I've been waiting for him to target someone with both the talent and the backbone to fight back effectively. Harrison studied Bill carefully. The question is whether you're that person. Bill felt the weight of the moment, the sense that his response would determine the trajectory of everything that followed. What exactly are you proposing? A position at Apex, Senior Director of Digital Transformation, reporting directly to me. 50% salary increase, full ownership of your innovations, and the resources to build the kind of career you deserve. Harrison paused for effect. Plus the opportunity to ensure that Marcus Webb faces consequences for his actions. You want me to help you destroy his career. I want you to help expose his pattern of behavior so that other talented people don't suffer as you have. There's a difference between revenge and justice, Bill. What I'm proposing is justice. Bill considered the offer, his mind racing through implications and possibilities. The GlobalTech project. If I leave Meridian, Webb gets to keep the credit. Does he? Harrison's smile was sharp. What happens when GlobalTech's implementation hits technical challenges that Marcus can't address? What happens when they need modifications to the algorithm that he doesn't understand? What happens when Jennifer Martinez starts asking questions about the discrepancies she's already noticed? He'll find someone else to blame. Claim implementation failures, external factors beyond his control. Perhaps. But we both know that stolen success is fundamentally unsustainable. Marcus can present your work convincingly, but he can't replicate your thinking process. And sooner or later, that limitation becomes apparent. Harrison leaned back in his chair, allowing Bill time to process. I'm not asking for an immediate answer. This is a significant decision that deserves careful consideration. But I will say this, talent like yours deserves to be recognized and rewarded. And patterns like Marcus's deserve to be exposed and stopped. How many others has he done this to at Meridian? Directly, at least 3 that we can document. Indirectly, his behavior creates a culture where innovation is undervalued and politics is rewarded. How many talented people do you think leave Meridian because they see what happens to those who actually do the work? Bill thought about Rebecca's research, about the colleagues who had left frustrated and bitter, about the systemic issues that allowed someone like Webb to thrive while actual innovators suffered. What would you need from me? Documentation. Testimony about the development process and Webb's actual involvement. Your willingness to stand behind your work when the time comes to set the record straight. Harrison's tone became serious. This isn't without risk, Bill. Marcus has political skills and senior leadership support. Fighting him requires courage and strategic thinking. ... And you think I have both? I think you have the intelligence to see this situation clearly and the integrity to want it corrected. The question is whether you have the resolve to see it through. Bill found himself thinking about his parents, about the sacrifices they had made to support his education, about the values they had instilled in him. They had taught him that hard work should be rewarded, that merit should matter, that standing up for what's right was worth the cost. I'll need time to consider your offer. Of course, Take whatever time you need. Harrison reached into his jacket and produced a business card. My direct line is on there. When you're ready to discuss specifics, call me. As they finished lunch, Harrison shared stories about Apex's culture, about projects where innovation was celebrated and properly attributed, about careers built on merit rather than manipulation. It painted a picture of everything Bill had thought Meridian would be when he joined 5 years ago. Walking back to his car, Bill felt a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. For the first time since Wednesday's presentation, he felt like he had options beyond simply accepting injustice or making futile complaints to HR. His phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. How did it go? Bill stared at the message, considering how to respond. The conversation with Harrison had changed everything, opened possibilities he hadn't imagined. But it had also made clear that the path forward would require courage, strategic thinking, and a willingness to challenge powerful people. He typed back, "We need to talk. Tonight. Somewhere private." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Bill drove back toward Meridian. In his rearview mirror, he could see Chez Laurent growing smaller, but the conversation he'd had there was already reshaping his understanding of what was possible. Marcus Webb thought he had won, but the game was far from over. The coffee shop Rebecca had chosen sat at the edge of a strip mall in Mountain View, the kind of anonymous location where two Meridian employees could meet without attracting attention from colleagues. Bill found her in a corner booth, her laptop open and a stack of printed documents beside her untouched latte. "You look different," she said as he settled across from her. "Like you've made a decision." "Still making it," Bill replied. "But Harrison's offer changes everything. The question is whether I'm brave enough to accept it." Rebecca studied his face with the analytical intensity she brought to data problems. "Tell me about the meeting." For the next 30 minutes, Bill recounted every detail of his lunch with Harrison, the man's obvious knowledge of Webb's pattern, his connection to previous victims, his strategic patience in waiting for the right moment to act. As he spoke, Rebecca made notes, her military training evident in the systematic way she organized information. "David Harrison?" she mused when he finished. "Tom's father. That explains the recruitment approach. This isn't business. It's personal. Does that make it wrong?" "Depends on whether his personal motivations align with justice." Rebecca leaned forward. "The question is whether you trust him." "I think I do. More importantly, I think he's right about Webb's pattern being unsustainable. The man can present my work, but he can't build on it." Rebecca nodded toward her laptop screen. "Speaking of which, I've been documenting everything I can find about Webb's history. Want to see what else I've uncovered?" She turned the laptop so Bill could see the spreadsheet she'd constructed. Names, dates, projects, outcomes. A methodical breakdown of Webb's career that painted a disturbing picture of systematic credit theft. "Sarah Chen, 2019, Rebecca read from her notes. Developed an innovative client retention algorithm for a healthcare consulting project. Webb claimed strategic oversight. Chen got relegated to, quote, technical support in the client presentation. She left for a competitor 6 months later. Kevin Rodriguez, 2020. Created a revolutionary cost optimization model for municipal government consulting. Webb positioned himself as the methodology architect. Rodriguez was listed as, quote, implementation team. He transferred to the Portland office and eventually left the company entirely. Bill studied the pattern with growing anger. How is this not documented anywhere officially? Because Webb is careful. He always provides just enough strategic input to claim collaborative authorship. He uses corporate structure to his advantage. Directors are expected to take credit for their team's work. Rebecca's expression was grim. And he's excellent at identifying people who are too focused on the work itself to pay attention to office politics. People like me. People with integrity who assume others share their values. Rebecca closed the laptop. But here's the interesting part. I reached out to Jennifer Martinez. Bill's eyebrows shot up. The GlobalTech CTO? What did you tell her? That I was conducting a post-project analysis to identify process improvements. Military intelligence training is useful for crafting plausible cover stories. Rebecca's smile was sharp. She was very willing to talk about the presentation inconsistencies she noticed. such as Webb's inability to explain the mathematical foundations of the optimization algorithms, his vague responses when she asked about alternative approaches you might have considered. Most tellingly, his complete unfamiliarity with the code structure when she wanted to discuss implementation challenges. Bill felt something cold settle in his stomach. She knows, she suspects. But Jennifer is also a seasoned executive who understands corporate politics. She's not going to make accusations without solid evidence. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. However, she did mention that GlobalTech is already encountering technical challenges with the implementation. What kind of challenges? Integration issues with their existing ERP systems. The kind of problems that require deep understanding of how the optimization algorithms actually work. Rebecca's expression was significant. The kind of problems Webb can't solve because he doesn't understand the underlying code. Bill's mind raced through the implications. If the implementation fails, it reflects badly on Webb's innovation and raises questions about the quality of the original work. But more importantly, it creates an opportunity for the real architect of the system to provide solutions. You think I should help them fix it? I think you should position yourself to be available when they realize they need someone who actually understands what they're implementing. Rebecca's strategic thinking was evident in every word. Harrison's offer isn't just about a new job, Bill. It's about creating a situation where the truth becomes undeniable. Bill stared out the coffee shop window at the evening traffic streaming past. For months, his focus had been entirely on technical innovation, on building something that would advance his career through merit and hard work. Now he was being forced to think strategically about corporate politics, about positioning and timing and leverage. There's something else, Rebecca said, pulling another document from her stack. I found the real reason Webb left Apex 5 years ago. She slid a printed news article across the table. The headline read, Apex Consulting settles intellectual property dispute with former employee. Bill scanned the article quickly. A blockchain security protocol that Webb claimed to have developed was actually created by a junior consultant. When the consultant challenged the attribution, Webb tried to have him fired for, quote, insubordination. The consultant hired a lawyer, and Apex settled out of court rather than face public scrutiny. Tom Harrison, Rebecca confirmed, David's son. The settlement included Webb's resignation and a non-disclosure agreement that prevented public discussion of the details. But Harrison Sr. remembers. Harrison Sr. has been waiting 5 years for an opportunity to hold Webb accountable. Rebecca's voice carried a note of respect. That's patient, strategic thinking. Bill felt pieces clicking into place. This isn't just about helping me. Harrison wants to expose Webb's pattern publicly, to prevent future victims. And he needs someone with first-hand experience and documented evidence to make that case effectively. Rebecca leaned forward. The question is whether you're willing to be that someone. Bill considered the weight of the decision before him. Accepting Harrison's offer meant leaving the comfortable predictability of his current position, meant engaging in corporate warfare with someone who had years more experience in office politics. But staying meant accepting injustice, meant watching Webb continue to exploit other talented people. What do you think I should do? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, her military background evident in the way she weighed considerations. I think talented people have an obligation to stand up to bullies, especially when those bullies use their positions to exploit others. I think Harrison is offering you more than just a new job. He's offering you a chance to be part of something larger. And if it backfires? If Webb's political connections protect him, and I just end up destroying my own career? Then at least you'll know you tried to do the right thing. Rebecca's expression was serious. But I don't think it will backfire. Webb's success depends on people staying silent, on victims accepting injustice rather than fighting back. Once that silence breaks, once people start documenting his pattern. She gestured to her laptop, to the spreadsheet full of evidence, to the growing documentation of Webb's systematic exploitation of subordinates. The truth has a way of surfacing when people are brave enough to speak it. Bill's phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Hope lunch was informative. Offer stands whenever you're ready. DH. He showed the message to Rebecca, who smiled knowingly. Strategic patience, but also strategic pressure. Harrison knows you're at a decision point. 24 hours, Bill said finally. I'll give myself 24 hours to decide. Whatever I choose. I want to be certain. As they gathered their materials and prepared to leave, Rebecca placed a hand on his arm. Whatever you decide, you won't be alone in this. Some fights are worth having, Bill, and some people are worth fighting for. Walking to his car, Bill felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. Behind him lay the comfortable familiarity of his current position, the predictable progression of a corporate career built on keeping his head down and doing good work. Ahead lay uncertainty, risk, and the possibility of either justice or career suicide. His phone buzzed again. This time the message was from Webb. Team meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Want to discuss next steps for leveraging our GlobalTech success. Our success. Bill stared at the words, feeling anger crystallize into determination. Some decisions, he realized, made themselves. The only question was whether he had the courage to follow through. He typed back, I'll be there. Then he opened a new message to Harrison. Can we meet tomorrow evening? I think I'm ready to discuss specifics. The die was cast. Whatever happened next, Bill Gates Jr. was no longer willing to be a victim. Rebecca found Bill in his cubicle the next morning, staring at his computer screen with the intensity of someone wrestling with a life-changing decision. The team meeting with Webb had ended an hour ago, another session where Webb had discussed their success and outlined plans for leveraging his innovation into additional client opportunities. How did it go? She asked quietly, settling into the chair beside his desk. Surreal, Bill replied, his voice carrying a mixture of anger and dark amusement. Webb spent 30 minutes discussing how we could build on our breakthrough, how my strategic vision could be applied to other clients. The man has completely convinced himself that he deserves credit for work he didn't do. Any mention of your actual contribution? He thanked me for my dedication to implementation excellence and suggested I'd learned valuable lessons about strategic thinking from observing his leadership. Bill's hands clenched involuntarily. Then he announced that he's putting together a proposal for a similar project with another Fortune 500 company. Wants me to handle the, quote, technical details while he focuses on, quote, strategic positioning. Rebecca's expression hardened. He's planning to do it again. Of course he is. Why wouldn't he? The pattern worked perfectly. He gets promoted, gets credit, gets to build his reputation on stolen innovation, and I get to be his technical implementation specialist for the rest of my career. Bill turned to face her fully, and Rebecca could see that something fundamental had shifted in his expression. The naive trust that had characterized his relationship with Webb was gone, replaced by a steely determination she recognized from her military days. I called Harrison this morning, he said. We're meeting tonight to discuss specifics. You've decided? I hashed the credit thief. Rebecca found Bill in his cubicle the next morning, staring at his computer screen with the intensity of someone wrestling with a life-changing decision. The team meeting with Webb had ended an hour ago, another session where Webb had discussed their success and outlined plans for leveraging his innovation into additional client opportunities. How did it go? She asked quietly, settling into the chair beside his desk. Surreal, Bill replied, his voice carrying a mixture of anger and dark amusement. Webb spent 30 minutes discussing how we could build on our breakthrough, how my strategic vision could be applied to other clients. The man has completely convinced himself that he deserves credit for work he didn't do. Any mention of your actual contribution? He thanked me for my dedication to implementation excellence and suggested I'd learned valuable lessons about strategic thinking from observing his leadership. Bill's hands clenched involuntarily. Then he announced that he's putting together a proposal for a similar project with another Fortune 500 company. Wants me to handle the technical details while he focuses on, quote, strategic positioning. Rebecca's expression hardened. He's planning to do it again. Of course he is. Why wouldn't he? The pattern worked perfectly. He gets promoted, gets credit, gets to build his reputation on stolen innovation, and I get to be his technical implementation specialist for the rest of my career. Bill turned to face her fully, and Rebecca could see that something fundamental had shifted in his expression. The naive trust that had characterized his relationship with Webb was gone, replaced by a steely determination she recognized from her military days. I called Harrison this morning, he said. We're meeting tonight to discuss specifics. You've decided? I've decided that I refuse to be complicit in my own exploitation. Bill's voice carried a quiet intensity that Rebecca had never heard before. Webb is planning to build his entire career on stolen work, and if I stay, I become an accessory to that theft. Every project where I do the innovation and he takes the credit makes me part of the problem. Rebecca nodded approvingly. What changed your mind? This morning's meeting, watching him outline how he plans to repeat the pattern, how he sees me as his permanent technical resource while he builds his reputation as an innovation leader. Bill gestured toward his computer screen, where Webb's follow-up email detailed the new project proposal. He actually wrote that my, quote, attention to detail and implementation focus would be valuable for, quote, 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 executing his strategic vision. The arrogance is breathtaking. Quote dot. If we do this, we're committed to seeing it through. I've been in ugly fights before, Rebecca replied. The difference is that this time we're fighting for something that matters. Justice? Justice. Truth. The principle that merit should be rewarded, and exploitation should have consequences. Rebecca's voice carried the conviction of someone who had sworn an oath to defend larger principles. Some fights choose you, Bill. This one chose you the moment Webb decided to steal your work. Bill felt a sense of resolution settling over him like armor. For a week, he had felt powerless, victimized by forces beyond his control. Now, with Rebecca's support and Harrison's guidance, he was beginning to see a path forward that led not just to personal vindication, but to meaningful change. There's one more thing, he said. I want to record my resignation conversation with Webb. If he reacts the way I think he will, if his arrogance makes him say something incriminating. Evidence, Rebecca agreed. Always useful to have. Are you in? Rebecca extended her hand. I'm in. They shook on it, sealing a partnership that would either restore justice or destroy their careers. As Rebecca returned to her desk, Bill turned back to his computer and began drafting his resignation letter. The words came easily now, each sentence carefully crafted to plant questions without making accusations, to suggest concerns without issuing challenges. His phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. Looking forward to our conversation tonight. The future is brighter than you might imagine. Bill smiled, feeling something he hadn't experienced since the morning he'd completed his innovation. Not the naive hope of someone trusting in institutional fairness, but the informed hope of someone who understood the game and was ready to play it strategically. Marcus Webb thought he had won. He was about to discover that the game had more players than he realized, and that some victories came at a price too high to pay. The revolution would begin with a resignation letter and a recorded conversation. Everything else would follow from there. Bill arrived at the office early Monday morning, his resignation letter printed on quality paper and folded in his jacket pocket. The small digital recorder Rebecca had provided, a remnant from her military intelligence days, was clipped inside his collar, invisible but recording everything. His hands were steady as he walked through Meridian's corridors, past the cubicles where his soon-to-be former colleagues were beginning another week of work under Marcus Webb's leadership. Webb's corner office commanded an impressive view of Silicon Valley, its glass walls offering the illusion of transparency while providing perfect soundproofing for sensitive conversations. Bill knocked on the frame and stepped inside when Webb gestured him forward. Bill, good morning. Webb looked up from his computer with that familiar paternal smile. I was just reviewing the proposal for the Hartwell Industries project. Your technical specifications were exactly what I needed to complete the strategic framework. The casual appropriation of his work no longer surprised Bill, but it still sparked anger that he carefully kept from his expression. Actually, Marcus, I wanted to discuss something else with you this morning. Of course. Close the door, have a seat. Quote dot. Bill settled into the chair across from Webb's desk, noting how the seating arrangement reinforced their hierarchical relationship. Webb elevated behind his executive desk, Bill positioned as a supplicant-seeking audience. The power dynamics that had once seemed natural now appeared calculated and deliberate. I've been doing some thinking about my career trajectory, Bill began, his voice calm and professional. About where I want to be 5 years from now, what kind of opportunities would help me grow as a strategic thinker. Webb leaned forward, his expression shifting to what Bill recognized as his mentoring mode. Excellent. Career planning is crucial at your level. What specific areas are you considering? Leadership roles, strategy positions, opportunities to take full ownership of innovation projects from conception through client presentation. Bill let the words settle, watching Webb's reaction carefully. I've realized that I want to be in a position where my contributions are recognized and attributed appropriately. Something flickered in Webb's eyes. Not quite suspicion, but heightened attention. Attribution is important, certainly, though it's worth remembering that in consulting we succeed as teams. Individual recognition is less important than collective achievement. I understand the team concept, Bill replied evenly. But I think there's value in clarity about who contributes what to each project. For development purposes, if nothing else. Webb's smile became slightly more forced. Of course, though I hope you're not feeling undervalued here at Meridian. Your work on the GlobalTech project was exemplary, and I've made sure that senior leadership understands your contribution to our success. My contribution, Bill repeated. How would you characterize that contribution? Essential implementation work, technical excellence, the kind of detailed execution that makes strategic innovation possible. Webb's tone remained pleasant, but Bill could see him growing cautious. Why do you ask? Bill reached into his jacket and withdrew the resignation letter. Because I've been offered a position elsewhere that would allow me to take on more strategic responsibilities. I wanted to give you proper notice. The transformation in Webb's expression was immediate and revealing. The paternal warmth vanished, replaced by something harder and more calculating. He took the letter but didn't open it, his eyes fixed on Bill's face. I see. May I ask where? Apex Consulting. They're creating a new digital transformation division and offered me the director position. Webb's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Apex. Interesting timing, given our recent success with GlobalTech. I assume they're hoping to capitalize on the reputation you've built here. The reputation I've built, Bill echoed. Yes, that's part of it. Quote dot. Well? Webb finally opened the resignation letter, scanning it quickly. 2 weeks' notice. Professional, appropriate. He looked up, his expression carefully neutral. Though I have to say, I'm surprised. I thought you understood the learning opportunities available here, the value of working under experienced strategic leadership. Oh, I've learned a great deal about strategic leadership, Bill replied. More than I ever expected to. Webb set the letter aside and leaned back in his chair, studying Bill with new intensity. Let me be direct, Bill. The GlobalTech innovation was developed under my guidance, using methodologies I provided, within a strategic framework I designed. While your technical contributions were valuable, the intellectual property and strategic insights belonged to Meridian and to the leadership that made them possible. Bill felt a surge of satisfaction. Webb's arrogance was making him careless, leading him to make precisely the kind of statements that would be useful later. I'm not challenging Meridian's ownership of the work product, Marcus. I'm simply pursuing an opportunity that offers more alignment with my career goals. Your career goals? Webb's tone carried a subtle threat. I hope you understand that reputation in this industry is built on relationships and trust. People talk, Bill. If Apex is hiring you based on exaggerated claims about your role in recent projects, that could reflect poorly on your professional integrity. The implied accusation hung in the air between them. Bill realized that Webb was essentially threatening to destroy his reputation if he left under circumstances that might reflect poorly on Webb's own claims of authorship. I would never exaggerate my contributions, Bill said carefully. In fact, I've been very precise about documenting exactly what I did and didn't do on every project. Something cold flickered in Webb's eyes. Documentation can be interpreted many ways, depending on one's perspective and level of experience. True. That's why I believe in comprehensive records, development logs, communication trails, timestamp data, the kind of documentation that provides clarity about sequence and authorship. Webb was fully alert now, recognizing that this conversation had moved beyond a simple resignation discussion into something more complex and potentially threatening. Bill, I hope you're not planning to do anything that might damage the relationships you've built here, or that might create legal complications regarding intellectual property. Legal complications? Consulting agreements include non-disclosure provisions and intellectual property clauses. Taking proprietary methodologies or strategic insights to a competitor could create significant professional and legal exposure. Bill felt the recorder capturing every word of what amounted to a veiled threat. Webb was essentially warning him not to claim credit for his own work, using legal intimidation to maintain his stolen position. I understand the legal framework, Bill replied calmly. I also understand the difference between proprietary company information and individual professional capabilities. Do you? Webb's mask was slipping, revealing the calculating manipulator beneath the mentoring facade. Because from where I sit, an individual contributor who thinks he can claim credit for strategic innovations developed under senior leadership sounds like someone who doesn't understand professional boundaries. Or someone who understands them very well, Bill countered. Someone who knows the difference between collaboration and appropriation. Quote. The words struck home. Webb's expression hardened completely, the pretense of friendly concern abandoned. I think we're done here. Your resignation is accepted, effective 2 weeks from today. I'll have HR handle the transition details. Bill stood, recognizing that he had gotten everything he needed from the conversation. Webb's arrogance had led him to make statements that revealed both his awareness of the credit theft and his willingness to use intimidation to protect his position. Thank you for the opportunity to work here, Marcus. It's been educational. I'm sure it has. Webb's voice carried barely concealed hostility. I hope your future endeavors work out as well as you expect. Bill paused at the door, turning back with what he hoped appeared to be genuine concern. One question. When GlobalTech encounters implementation challenges with the optimization system, who will handle the technical support? I know how complex those algorithms can be for someone who didn't develop them. Webb's face flushed slightly, but he maintained his composure. I'm confident we have the technical resources to handle any issues that arise. Of course. Well, good luck. Bill left Webb's office feeling a mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. The conversation had gone exactly as Harrison had predicted. Webb's arrogance had made him overplay his hand, creating a recorded confession of his tactics while revealing his complete inability to address the technical challenges ahead. Rebecca was waiting by his desk when he returned, her expression expectant. How did it go? Perfectly, Bill replied quietly. He couldn't help himself. Threatened me with legal action if I claimed credit for my own work, essentially admitted that he can't handle technical challenges without me, and made it clear that he knows exactly what he's been doing. Recorded? Every word. Bill patted his collar where the device was hidden. Harrison is going to love this. When do you see him? Tonight. To finalize the Apex offer and plan our next steps. Bill looked around the office that had been his professional home for 5 years, feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and liberation. 2 weeks from today, I'll be working somewhere that values innovation over politics. And Webb will be trying to manage a technical implementation he doesn't understand, Rebecca added with satisfaction. The beautiful thing is that we don't have to do anything to him, Bill realized. We just have to let him fail on his own merits. As news of Bill's resignation spread through the office, colleagues stopped by to express surprise and best wishes. Many seemed genuinely sorry to see him go, unaware of the drama that had prompted his decision. A few, however, looked at him with expressions that suggested they understood more than they were saying. Sarah Chen from the 2019 healthcare project stopped by late in the afternoon. "Congratulations on the new opportunity," she said quietly. "I hope it works out better than staying here would have." Bill met her eyes, seeing recognition and perhaps hope in her expression. "Thank you. I think it will." As the day ended and he prepared to leave Meridian for what would be one of his final times as an employee, Bill felt the weight of decision lifting from his shoulders. The resignation was complete, the recording secured, the next phase of his career about to begin. Marcus Webb thought he had intimidated a subordinate into quiet compliance. He was about to discover that some people, when pushed too far, pushed back with strategic precision and devastating effect. The game was accelerating, and Bill was no longer playing defense. 6 weeks later, Bill sat in his new office at Apex Consulting, watching the morning sun cast long shadows across his desk while reviewing the technical specifications for what would become his first major independent project. The view from the 20th floor overlooked the same Silicon Valley landscape he'd seen from Meridian, but everything felt different now. The air seemed cleaner, the possibilities more expansive, the future entirely under his control. David Harrison knocked on his open door, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the satisfied expression of someone whose strategic patience had paid off handsomely. "How are you settling in?" "Better than I could have imagined," Bill replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "The team dynamic here is incredible. People actually collaborate instead of competing for credit. That's what happens when innovation is properly valued and attributed." Harrison settled into the chair across from Bill's desk. "Speaking of which, I have some interesting news about your former workplace." Bill looked up with sharp attention. "GlobalTech?" "Among other things. Jennifer Martinez called me yesterday. It seems they're experiencing some significant challenges with their supply chain optimization implementation." "What kind of challenges?" Harrison's smile carried a hint of dark satisfaction. "The kind that require deep understanding of the underlying algorithms, integration issues, unexpected bottlenecks, system conflicts that the technical documentation doesn't address. Marcus Webb has been trying to provide solutions, but he doesn't understand how the system actually works," Bill finished. Jennifer's exact words were that the support they're receiving seems, quote, "disconnected from the innovation they were promised." She's beginning to ask pointed questions about who actually developed the optimization protocols. Bill felt a complex mix of vindication and concern. He had hoped Webb's incompetence would eventually surface, but he hadn't anticipated how quickly it might happen. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that GlobalTech is considering bringing in external consultants to fix the implementation." Jennifer specifically asked whether Apex might be available to provide technical expertise. The implications hit Bill immediately. She wants the actual architect of the system. She wants someone who can solve problems that Webb clearly can't address. Someone who understands the code well enough to modify it, adapt it, make it work within GlobalTech's existing infrastructure. Bill leaned back in his chair, processing the opportunity. That would be perfect vindication, public proof that innovation travels with the innovator, not with whoever claims credit for it. Harrison's strategic thinking was evident in every word, but only if you're interested in taking on the project. "Of course I'm interested. But won't Webb try to interfere? Claim that I'm stealing Meridian's intellectual property?" Harrison's expression hardened slightly. Marcus is hardly in a position to make accusations about intellectual property theft, especially not when he can't provide the technical support that GlobalTech needs. "What about the legal issues he threatened me with?" "Empty threats from someone who knows he's overplayed his hand. Besides, you wouldn't be stealing anything. You'd be providing consulting services to help implement a system that, frankly, you understand better than anyone else." Bill considered the elegant justice of the situation. Webb's stolen success was unraveling precisely because he lacked the competence to maintain it, creating an opportunity for the actual innovator to demonstrate his value while helping a client solve real problems. "There's something else," Harrison continued. "Rebecca Thompson called this morning. It seems Meridian is experiencing some internal turbulence related to the GlobalTech situation." What kind of turbulence? Questions about project attribution, concerns about technical competency, whispered conversations about patterns of behavior. Harrison's smile was sharp. Apparently, your resignation prompted other people to start asking uncomfortable questions about Marcus's management style. Bill felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with concern for his former colleagues. Is Rebecca safe? More than safe. She's actually become something of a leader among the people who are asking those questions. Military backgrounds tend to command respect when integrity issues arise. And Webb? Under pressure. Senior leadership is beginning to notice that his signature innovation is failing in implementation, and they're not entirely convinced by his explanations about, quote, external factors and, quote, client-side technical limitations. Bill's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. The caller ID showed Jennifer Martinez's name, and he looked at Harrison with raised eyebrows before answering. Jennifer, good morning. Bill, I hope I'm not calling it a bad time. I understand you've moved to Apex Consulting, that's correct. I'm heading up their new digital transformation division. Excellent. I was hoping we could discuss a consulting opportunity. GlobalTech is experiencing some technical challenges with our supply chain optimization implementation, and we need someone with deep expertise in the underlying algorithms. Bill met Harrison's eyes, seeing approval and encouragement in his expression. I'd be happy to discuss how we might help. What specific challenges are you encountering? For the next 15 minutes, Jennifer described problems that Bill recognized immediately. Integration conflicts he had anticipated during the original development, system optimization issues that required understanding of the algorithm's decision trees, data flow bottlenecks that could only be resolved by someone who understood the code's architecture. These are complex issues, Bill said when she finished. They require modification of the core algorithms, not just technical support. That's what we suspected. Marcus Webb has been trying to provide guidance, but his recommendations haven't been effective. We need someone who can actually work with the code. I can certainly help with that. When would you like to start? As soon as possible. This implementation is critical to our Q4 performance projections. After finalizing the consulting arrangement, Bill hung up and turned to Harrison with a mixture of excitement and amazement. She basically just hired me to fix my own work. She hired the person who actually understands the system to solve problems that the person claiming credit can't address, Harrison corrected. There's a beautiful symmetry to it. Webb is going to be furious. Webb is going to be exposed. When GlobalTech's implementation succeeds under your guidance after failing under his, it becomes very clear who actually developed the innovation. Bill felt pieces clicking into place. This isn't just about fixing their technical problems. It's about creating undeniable proof of authorship and demonstrating that Apex Consulting employs the kind of talent that can solve complex problems other firms can't address. Harrison stood, his satisfaction evident. Win-win-win. GlobalTech gets a working system, you get recognition for your innovation, and Apex gets a high-profile success story. What about Webb? Marcus will have to explain to Meridian's senior leadership why their signature innovation only works when implemented by consultants from a competing firm. Harrison's expression was coldly satisfied. That should be an interesting conversation. As Harrison left his office, Bill turned back to his computer and began outlining his approach to the GlobalTech consultation. The technical challenges were significant but solvable, assuming one actually understood how the optimization algorithms worked. For someone who had developed them from scratch, the fixes were straightforward. His phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Heard about the GlobalTech contract. Perfect justice. Webb is panicking. Bill smiled, typing back. Justice has a way of finding the right channels. Outside his window, Silicon Valley hummed with its usual energy, dreams being built, innovations being born, careers being launched. But for the first time since he'd arrived in California 5 years ago, Bill felt like he was truly part of that energy, rather than just serving it. The boy from small-town Ohio who had trusted in institutional fairness had learned hard lessons about corporate politics and systematic exploitation. But he had also learned that integrity, when combined with strategic thinking and patient determination, could ultimately triumph over manipulation and theft. Marcus Webb had stolen his innovation, but he couldn't steal his competence. And in the end, competence was what mattered. The revolution was accelerating, and Bill was no longer just a participant, he was becoming a leader. The credit thief. The conference room at GlobalTech Industries fell silent as Marcus Webb finished his presentation, his polished delivery unable to mask the fundamental problem with his proposed solutions. Across the table, Jennifer Martinez's expression reflected the growing frustration that had characterized their relationship since the implementation failures began. "Let me understand this correctly," Jennifer said, her voice carrying the controlled authority of someone accustomed to cutting through corporate nonsense. "You're recommending that we essentially rebuild the optimization protocols from scratch?" Webb maintained his confident demeanor, despite the sweat forming at his collar. "Not rebuild, Jennifer. Enhance. The original framework was solid, but these integration challenges require a more sophisticated approach." "The original framework that you developed," Jennifer stated, though her tone suggested it was more question than confirmation. "That I led the development of, yes, under my strategic guidance." Jennifer glanced at the GlobalTech technical team flanking her, their expressions reflecting the skepticism that had been building through weeks of failed support sessions. "Marcus, I'm going to be direct. Your proposed solutions don't demonstrate the kind of deep technical understanding we'd expect from the systems architect." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Webb's carefully maintained composure showed the first signs of cracking. "I think there may be some misunderstanding about the development process. Large-scale innovations involve collaborative effort across multiple team members." "Of course they do. But the technical lead should be able to explain why specific algorithmic choices were made, should understand how the decision trees function at a granular level." Jennifer leaned forward. "When I ask you about the Monte Carlo validation protocols, you give me textbook responses. When I ask about bottleneck prediction methodologies, you redirect to strategic considerations. Because strategy is my focus. Technical implementation details are handled by Bill Gates," Jennifer interrupted, "who is no longer with your firm." Webb's face flushed. Bill was a valued team member, but the intellectual framework belongs to Meridian and to the leadership that guided its development. Then why can't you fix the problems he would understand immediately? The question struck like a physical blow. Webb found himself in the impossible position of claiming ownership of work he couldn't actually perform, trying to maintain credibility while being systematically exposed by his own incompetence. "The challenges we're facing are complex integration issues that require solutions that Apex Consulting provided in 3 days," Jennifer said quietly. "Solutions that Bill Gates developed and implemented while you've spent 3 weeks proposing workarounds that don't address the core problems." Webb's composure finally cracked completely. "You hired our competitor? Without consulting with Meridian? We hired the person who actually understands our system. The person who can modify algorithms he developed instead of just explaining why they can't be modified." Jennifer's voice carried the finality of someone who had reached the end of her patience. "Marcus, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you personally develop the optimization protocols that were presented to us 6 weeks ago?" The moment stretched between them like a taut wire. Webb realized that any answer he gave would either be an admission of incompetence or an outright lie to a client who already knew the truth. "The development process involved collaborative input from multiple team members working under my strategic leadership," he said finally, falling back on corporate speak that fooled no one. "That's not what I asked." Webb stood abruptly, recognizing that the meeting had become a public humiliation he couldn't recover from. "I think there may be some confusion about project attribution that would be better addressed through formal channels." "There's no confusion, Marcus. The attribution is perfectly clear to anyone who understands the technical work." Jennifer's words followed him toward the door. "We'll be terminating Meridian's support contract and formalizing our arrangement with Apex." Webb left the GlobalTech building feeling like a man walking away from the wreckage of his own ambitions. The drive back to Meridian passed in a blur of anger and calculation as he tried to figure out how to spin the disaster that his stolen success had become. Meanwhile, 3 floors above in Robert Meridian's executive suite, Rebecca Thompson was presenting a very different kind of report. The CEO listened with growing concern as she outlined the pattern of behavior that had led to the GlobalTech debacle, supported by documentation that painted a devastating picture of systematic credit theft. "These are serious allegations, Rebecca," Meridian said when she finished. "You're suggesting that Marcus has been claiming credit for subordinates' work throughout his tenure here." "I'm documenting a pattern that's verifiable through project records, employee testimonials, and client feedback," Rebecca replied. "The GlobalTech situation isn't an isolated incident. It's the inevitable result of promoting someone based on stolen innovations." Meridian studied the timeline she had prepared, noting the correlation between Webb's claimed successes and the subsequent departures of talented team members. "Why wasn't this brought to my attention earlier?" "Because victims of credit theft are typically junior employees challenging senior directors. The power dynamics make it almost impossible to speak up without appearing ungrateful or insubordinate." "But you're speaking up now." "Because Bill Gates proved that it's possible to fight back effectively. His success at Apex demonstrates that talent ultimately finds recognition, and his willingness to stand up to Webb inspired others to share their experiences." Meridian was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. He had built his firm on principles of ethical excellence and merit-based advancement, but it appeared that those principles had been systematically violated by one of his most trusted directors. "What do you recommend?" "A comprehensive review of project attribution for all initiatives Webb has claimed leadership on, client interviews to assess his actual technical contributions, and immediate action to prevent him from exploiting other team members." "You realize this could be devastating for Marcus's career." Rebecca met his eyes steadily. "With respect, sir, what's been devastating are the careers of talented people who've been exploited by his behavior. Webb made his choices. Now he needs to face the consequences." When Webb finally returned to Meridian that afternoon, he found a message requesting his immediate presence in the CEO's office. The walk down the executive corridor felt like a death march, his instincts telling him that the careful edifice he had built was finally collapsing. Robert Meridian was not alone. The firm's general counsel sat beside him, legal pads and recorded statements arranged on the conference table like evidence in a trial. Webb recognized several of the documents: Rebecca's research, client correspondence, project attribution analyses that revealed patterns he had thought were safely buried. "Marcus, please sit down," Meridian said, his voice carrying none of its usual warmth. "We need to discuss some concerns that have been raised about project attribution and management practices." Webb settled into the chair across from them, his mind racing through potential responses and explanations. But as Meridian began reading from client statements and employee testimonials, as the evidence mounted and the pattern became undeniable, he realized that no amount of corporate speak could save him now. The theft that had defined his career was finally being exposed, and the consequences would be as systematic and devastating as the exploitation had been. Outside, Silicon Valley continued its relentless pursuit of innovation and success. But inside Meridian Strategies, a reckoning was finally underway, one that would restore justice for past victims while preventing future ones. The revolution was complete. Truth had found its voice, and justice was finally being served. 3 months later, Bill stood before a packed auditorium at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, delivering a keynote address on ethics and innovation in corporate consulting. The invitation had come from the school's Center for Professional Development, but the real driving force had been student requests for someone who could speak authentically about navigating corporate politics while maintaining integrity. "The greatest threat to innovation isn't competition or market forces," Bill said, his voice carrying clearly through the acoustically perfect hall. "It's the systematic exploitation of creative talent by those who understand politics better than they understand progress." In the audience, Rebecca Thompson smiled with pride and satisfaction. She had left Meridian 6 weeks after Bill's departure, joining Apex as Director of Strategic Analytics, and bringing with her 3 other talented consultants who had grown tired of seeing their work attributed to others. The exodus had been the final blow to Webb's credibility and Meridian's reputation in the industry. "When someone steals credit for innovation, they don't just harm the individual creator," Bill continued. They damage the entire ecosystem that depends on recognizing and rewarding creative thinking. They teach talented people that merit doesn't matter, that success comes from manipulation rather than contribution. David Harrison watched from the front row, his strategic patience having been rewarded beyond his original expectations. Bill's success at Apex had been spectacular. The GlobalTech implementation had led to 5 additional Fortune 500 contracts, establishing the firm as a leader in AI-driven supply chain optimization. More importantly, Bill's willingness to speak publicly about his experience had encouraged other victims of credit theft to come forward, creating industry-wide conversations about attribution and accountability. "But here's what I learned," Bill said, his tone shifting from analysis to inspiration. "Individual integrity, when combined with strategic thinking and collaborative support, can ultimately triumph over systematic exploitation. The truth has power, but only when people are brave enough to speak it and smart enough to position it effectively." The speech concluded to sustained applause, followed by a reception where students and faculty members approached Bill with their own stories of workplace challenges and ethical dilemmas. Many were inspired by his example. Others sought practical advice about standing up to powerful figures who abused their authority. Jennifer Martinez was among the attendees, having driven down from San Francisco specifically to hear Bill's presentation. She approached him during the reception with a proposal that would become his next major career milestone. "GlobalTech is creating a new position," she said without preamble. "Chief Innovation Officer, reporting directly to the CEO. We want someone who understands both the technical and ethical dimensions of corporate innovation." Bill felt the familiar surge of excitement that came with new challenges and opportunities. "That sounds like an incredible opportunity." "It is. We've learned from the supply chain optimization experience that true innovation requires leaders who can both create breakthrough solutions and build ethical teams around them." Jennifer's expression was serious. "We want you to help us build a culture where merit matters and exploitation has no place." "What about Apex?" "David Harrison and I have been discussing a strategic partnership. GlobalTech would become Apex's primary consulting client, while you would lead our internal innovation efforts. Win-win for everyone involved." As the reception wound down, Bill found himself reflecting the die was cast. Whatever happened next, Bill Gates Jr. was no longer willing to be a victim. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Quote.